you would not make a lot of money. Like Linnea is 50 people and you're squeezing out the back room.
Right.
But what they could do is they could perform. They would get room and board, so they didn't have to pay for a hotel or a motel. They would pick up some gig money from that,
yes.
$100, a couple of $100, and they would sell records and tapes and whatever they were selling.
Yes.
And they used to sell out, and they would build friends,
right.
so that the next time they were coming by, the places would be filled. And this was the house concert tour, and now suddenly musicians from all over the East Coast started calling, and they would call Elaine. You know, they wanted a tour of the West Coast, but they didn't know who to speak to, and blah blah blah, and so she would basically say, "Yeah, I can arrange that for you." And little by little, she suddenly became a booking agent. She had created these venues, and now she had started getting calls from various musicians and their agents, and they could actually perform up the coast. And I remember one of the toughest nuts to crack was Mick Maloney. Mick, you know, had a 5-man band, and he wanted a certain minimum, and it was hard to guarantee these kind of minimums. So what we did, I remember with him, is we offered him a couple of options. We said, Mick, I'll tell you what, instead of arguing on each gig, we'll argue what your total income would be for the whole trip up the coast. And we said, you can have a guarantee of so many dollars, I've forgotten what the exact numbers were, or we could guarantee you a percentage of the gate. We can write it either way.
Okay.
And he said, oh, no, I don't want a percentage of the gate. There's no motivation on the part of the, you know, of the venue to advertise or do anything if they don't have anything at risk. And he was right.
Okay.
So he took the guarantee, which, of course, was lower than a sellout.
Yeah.
And by the time he reached Vancouver, he was very frustrated and was arguing with Elaine all the time on the phone. I want a percentage of the gate. We're performing to sell out houses. We should get a piece of it. And Elaine said, you have a contract? Read it. She said, come back next year and you can go the other way. and he accepted that. And it was the first time, I think, a woman ever bested Mick Maloney. Because most of these Irish musicians are, especially the men, are very, male chauvinist type.
All right, sure.
And he's become one of our best friends. And in fact, Mick just finished writing a book called Far from the Shamrock Shore. And it talks about the story of Irish-American immigration through song.
Oh, interesting.
And he sent it to us, and he wrote in it to Clark and Elaine, with thanks for all of your support, encouragement, and friendship over the years,
that's nice.
Mick Maloney. And we have lots of memorabilia like this.
Now, did you and Elaine, like, obviously you were making some profit on this. Did you plow it back into CTMS?
No.
Okay.
This was not CTMS. There was no CTMS.
This was prior even to that. Okay,
yeah,
I see.
This was prior. But this was building a mailing list that got bigger and bigger.
Okay.
And then people kept clamoring, we really want to know more about the Welsh harp, or how do you play a hammered dulcimer, and on and on and on. And so, little by little, I guess there was one more piece. Elaine, at the time, was a craft person. She... Hang on for a second.
Sure.
Yeah, she was a craftsperson, and so she used to do a lot of shows in and around Los Angeles, and these shows were craft shows. I don't know if they have similar things. Where you live now?
Austin, Texas.
Yeah, I don't know if Austin has that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, so there were a lot of these shows, and one of the semi-annual shows was on a strip of grass, kind of a long, mile-long park, right along Wilshire Boulevard, no, Santa Monica Boulevard, in Beverly Hills. And it was called An Affair in the Garden. And Elaine did the show and befriended the Parks and Recreation people at Beverly Hills. And, she did that for a number of years, and then she told one time the Parks and Rec person, you really need to attract some crowds. You probably should have a stage and some music here. And they said, gee, that's a great idea. Do you know any musicians? And she said, thousands. And so the next couple of years, she was bringing in some fine musicians in the area. These were people who had, either played before or, immigrated to L.A. or had begun to learn at the various workshops that we were running. And these were damn good musicians, and they would pick up a couple $100 for playing over the weekend on a Saturday and Sunday, and she would have about 3 or 4 musicians come in. So the stage was always busy, and it was a big success. Whereupon the lady from the Parks and Rec came over to Elaine and said, Beverly Hills owns a quiet park in Beverly Hills. It's called the Doheny Mansion because it was built in the 1910 or 20 time period. In that portion of Beverly Hills, which now sells for something like $10 million an acre. And Doheny was an Irishman who came to L.A. around the turn of the century, bought some land to build a house, and when he stuck, a stick into the ground, up came the bubbling crude. They made a story about the Beverly Hillbillies.
Right.
But it was really the Dohenys, and they owned most of the Beverly Hills area, as well as area down near central Los Angeles. Anyway, the Dohenys built, as a gift to the son, they built a big mansion with stones brought over from Ireland called greystones. And I think it was about a 30-acre estate they built on top of the hill, this incredible mansion. He then got married and brought his wife in, and suddenly got murdered. This was back around 1912 or so. He got murdered, and the story was the wife was guilty, but they never could prove it. And the other story was that he was a homosexual and the lover killed him, whatever. She lived in the mansion for something like 50 years, almost alone. And when she died, the estate wanted to divide up most of the lands in that area and subdivide. And Beverly Hills said, well, if you do that, we're not going to have enough water in the city, so we need acreage to build a reservoir. So they said, well, we'll give you the Doheny Mansion, which was kind of like a white elephant, cost millions to maintain. And Beverly Hills said, okay, we'll take it, and we'll build an underground reservoir, which they did, but they were stuck with the mansion, which is amongst the most gorgeous homes in the area. So they leased it to the American Film Institute, which you may have heard lots about. And they turned the mansion into a wreck when they left, but they had the inside of the of the mansion, and Beverly Hills Parks and Rec was responsible for maintenance of the place and for doing something. So during the summers, they would have a series of outdoor, in the patio concerts, and they would bring in a bunch of folding chairs, and they would have small chamber music groups, that kind of a thing.
Right.
They would get 50, 100 people who would come in, and it was a very nice setting, and it was very much like a Beverly Hills event. People in tuxedos serving, wine and cocktails, and she said, we'd like to expand that function. Would any of your musician friends be interested? And so Elaine and I went up to take a look at Greystone, and we fell in love with the place. Incredible, posh, ostentatious area that was very much run down. The city, for example, had taken this gorgeous Olympic-sized swimming pool and filled it in with cement because it was too dangerous. And so here was this Olympic-sized swimming pool with cement, but it was in a beautiful, restricted area. And we said, my God, we could have a dance there.
Right.
So we wandered around the park, and we kind of tuned the park like you'd tune an instrument. We could have this kind of music here, and it wouldn't bleed if we had that. If we had a dance on top of the swimming pool, the music wouldn't bleed somewhere else. And we worried about that kind of stuff. And so we went back and we said, yeah, we could put on a small festival. And they said, okay, but we got to restrict it to a few hundred people. And we said, well, we have no way of restricting it, but we'll do our best. And so the first year, we put together our festival, and the first year we focused on dulcimers. So we had hammer dulcimers and lap dulcimers, and we put together, I think, 4 workshops, 4 areas that would have once an hour they would change, and we got people who would teach hammer and lap dulcimer. And we set that up, and we sold out 5 months before the event. And it was just a Saturday. And everybody said, oh, we got to do more. So the following year, we doubled it. We did it Saturday and Sunday. And we sold out again 5 months before. Meanwhile, Beverly Hills handled all the money that was collected, and they handled all the policing of the facility. And we noticed that they did both poorly. That, we had hundreds of people coming in, and there wasn't hundreds of dollars in the till. And so something was going wrong. And we still had to pay the artists and so forth. So that caused us to form CTMS.
I see. Okay.
And we got a few of the people in the community who played various instruments, and one of them was a hammer dulcimer player who was also a lawyer, and she helped us incorporate. And Lawyers for the Arts, which is an organization in L.A. that donates their time, they helped us found the organization, and there was initially a board of about 5 people, which today it's 19 people. We grew it. And the whole purpose of the board was, in fact, to run this festival and to continue the objective of bringing folk music to the people, and not just concerts, but rather exposure and to all of the aspects of the culture. Namely, the music didn't grow by itself; it grew as part of a culture. So, what are the other aspects of it? So, song and dance and crafts, and you see this most excitingly with the Irish, but it's not, it's not particularized to the Irish. Every culture has the same thing. It just hasn't been as well promulgated. And so we started to have a small arts and crafts fair that went with it that was related to the music. You couldn't bring in, manufactured items. You could only bring in hand manufactured items that were part of the culture. And so the second year, we doubled to Saturday and Sunday. The third year, we doubled again. So we had 8 workshops each of 2 days, and it went from there. And then we had people run over to us and say, gee, you should have a workshop on guitars, or how about banjos? And our attitude was, okay, do you know anybody who's competent in that?
Right.
And so we developed skills of our own in managing. Our skills were, if somebody brought a great idea, we would say, and do you know any people in this field? And somebody would say, yeah, I know something. And we would say, well, gee, okay, we'll help you. Why don't you run with that? And, and we'll handle all the financial and the other matters. But you orchestrate, who will play and what kind of music and so forth. And initially, people would run away. They don't want responsibility.
Right.
They just want to have fun. But we did it in a gentle way, and we found that people are very competent and they are enthusiastic, and if you give them a support structure, they'll run with it. And so, as it's turned out, CTMS became kind of a holding company, a Wall Street holding company. Each of the different areas are like our companies. So we would have a leader of the guitar area, and they would be entitled to work with the team, and their job was to basically structure. I think we have 6 or 7 hours a day, so they have like 12 to 14 workshops. They have to staff with competent people, and they have to bring in teams of people who will help them, set up the workshop in
Right.
terms of keeping track of the artist, making sure he shows up, and the rest. And we set up an infrastructure on the financial aspects, how would money be collected and how would it get deposited, and who paid the checks to the artist and who negotiated how much they would get, and so forth. And we started creating, in effect, a structure. It wasn't fair to pay one artist more than another artist, even though some artists were better well known. We weren't putting on a performance festival. We were putting on a teaching festival, and the whole purpose was to teach whatever it is. So if you had a guitarist, he wasn't supposed to do a mini concert. He was supposed to teach how to play a particular song.
Okay.
Like if Elizabeth Cotton was there, how did she get some of those incredible bass runs?
Yeah.
And so that's became the theme. And today we run 25 rings. Think of it as a 3-ring circus. We have a 25-ring circus. And each ring is, in effect, managed by an individual who has skill and knowledge and motivation in that particular instrument and has a team of people around him. But CTMS handles the whole, financial management, and negotiates contracts with the cities and
Right.
wherever else it is. And we also saw from experiences at other festivals that that every person who participates in our event signs a contract which spells out his job. And we have now a 100-page manual on every job in the festival.
Yeah.
And we learned this when we went to China, and we saw that in China, every time you asked a particular guy to do something, bring me some towels or whatever it is in the hotel, they would say, not my job. And the reason is, nobody wants to get pinned down. And we got the same response often, how come such and such was left with his guitar and his harp waiting for a ride and never came, and they would say, well, not my job, and we had, yes, it is your job. And he said, well, nobody told me. So we have the manuals that say what the job is, and we have 2 training periods, which is mandatory. They must come or they can't volunteer. And then, of course, people get benefits for volunteering. But all of that grew up through the infrastructure. And and many of the artists who performed in our home over the years became artists that we would bring out for the festival. Today, the festival consists of something like 350 volunteers, about 110 artists from all over the world. We now bring artists in from South America, from Europe, Scotland, Ireland, Spain, Italy, France. And during this time, Elaine started bringing in musicians for the house concerts and other activities.
I was going to ask you, do you still do house concerts? Or did you for some time?
We don't do it in our house anymore.
Okay.
We had an earthquake back in '94, I think it was.
Uh-huh.
It wrecked the house.
Oh, God.
It took us 3-4 years to get it back in shape.
Uh-huh.
And by that time, the scene in L.A. had grown phenomenally, that there were many, many other house concerts in the area.
Mm-hmm.
McCabe's was still here. There were other places for people to perform. The dance scene, the contra dance scene, has grown immensely. There must be 2 dances every weekend somewhere in Los Angeles. So it's a very vibrant musical community at this time. We won a bid from the city of Los Angeles. They had a very unique program. They owned lots of properties that were run down, and it cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to just, have guards shutter these places and watch them from burning down or having a bunch of transients or junkies go live in them. Somebody had a brilliant idea. Why don't we open these places by giving them on a 5-year lease to nonprofit arts organizations as their home, maybe even an old theater or something, and that way they would pay a small stipend of about $15,000 to the organization. If the organization would basically keep the place open and turn it into an arts organization, whatever your art happened to be.
Okay. And
almost overnight, there are now about a half a dozen of these facilities, and we bid on an old firehouse right in Encino, right in the middle of the park, and we won. And it's like 1,100 square feet. We have a 5-year lease for free. They pay all the utilities.
God.
And we put on. That's our office. And Elaine and Tammy, the festival director, are there from 10 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon, Monday through Friday, and that's the hours. And evenings and weekends, it's open up to the community for various other gatherings. It's a vibrant community, so there are dance groups, there are singing groups, there are, bring your lunch groups.
Right.
And so, like 2 nights a week, we have classes on guitar and banjo and mandolin. We have concerts that we hold there. We have a small concert stage that can hold about 80 people, and that kind of replaced our previous house concert.
Mm-hmm.
because we're part of the city now, we're an independent group, but because we have a contract with the city, there is a Parks and Recreation facility like a half a block away, and they have a large community center that has a stage and seating capacity for about 300. So when we have some new groups coming through, we can basically take that place any weekend we want, and we bring in the sound and the artists and charge for it and collect whatever we want. So for big groups, we can handle that too, which is only a block away. And kind of like that's where...
That's an incredible story. I mean, it's an incredible story, and I'm very glad I called you to get it, actually.
There's a tie-in to the Folk Alliance, which was after doing our festival for some, 13 or 14 years, I was still traveling to the East Coast, and Elaine was still coming with me, and we would go to these various festivals, and we would commiserate with all the people at them. And what we found by doing this for, some 20 years is that, almost every one of these organizers has similar problems. They're always short on money, so how do you raise funds? How do you maintain volunteers? How do you get salary for any of the infrastructure that is needed for any of these organizations? There are only a few Chicago's, Old Towns, and Philadelphia folk music events. Most of the 500, places we correspond with, and we still do, are small. They're mom and pop type stores and communities all over, from Dayton, Ohio, to a little bit north in Los Angeles, in California. And so most of these places are a few hundred people, and they do shit-kicking music or something, and they don't have the skills or the talent or even the knowledge of what other people are suffering. And we said, they all have common problems. We need to see if there's some way to spread this rather than be a virus. I'm not going to travel around the world constantly. And so we got the idea, and for like 3 years, we went and we talked to people around the country when we took these trips. And we would present the ideas to them, and we would ask what their opinions were and how might it be formed and so forth. And we got advice. A lot of people gave us advice. Almost every one of them said, you won't succeed. This has been tried, and they mentioned a number of attempts to do this. And she said infrastructure and infighting and so forth will make it impossible for this to succeed. But we said, we wish you luck and blah, blah, blah. So we thought about it. We incorporated all those ideas, and we said most of the festivals in the world, which are the big organizing activities in the communities, are done on the East Coast during the summer, because that's when you get good weather and you can make plans. But we on the West, we have good weather all the time. And we said, we can host such a meeting if we chose to bring people out to organize it on the West Coast around January, middle January, after the holidays are all finished and so forth. And we said, why? Because everybody watches the Rose Parade in 70-degree weather on the East Coast when they're buried under 20 feet of snow. But we don't have that problem. So the weather would be a real attraction to get people to come. So I sat down and got on the computer, and with Lotus 123, I did a pro forma budget. And I said, if we got 50 people and we charged them basically, we had a camp that we used to have a singing camp over the New Year's holidays. And so we knew the camp, we knew the facilities, lots of food, lots of good place, an upscale camp, hotel rooms rather than, more like motel rooms rather than tents, excellent food, good meeting places, lots of places to wander, 100 yards off of the ocean, so they can go down in the tide pools and have a blast. And so we said, okay, if we hosted it there, the cost to us would be so many dollars. If we got 50 people at about $50 a head, plus they paid their own transportation out,
right,
we could break even. So we held, after 3 years of planning and talking it up, and writing letters and phone calls and personal ones to 130 people showed up at Malibu for the first meeting.
Yeah, and that story I got from you as well as from a lot of others that you contacted.
It was a brilliant success, and Elaine and I, having, as I said, a lot of experience in traveling around to other festivals, we took the best ideas from every one of those festivals and put them into the structure. So there were workshops all during the daytime hours, the intent of which was to shape an organization, let these 130 people blow off steam and try to focus in on what kind of an organization it should be. I drafted a pro forma set of bylaws. We set up a series of workshops. We invited people from the Canadian consulate to come up and talk about funding monies that the Canadian consulate would be able to afford and who to write to. We had some showcasing. We had Sandy Silva do a bunch of step dancing, and we had some Native American Indians come out for the local area. And so we had some work, some demonstrations, showcasing. We had a table for booths, in effect. People could bring out the literature from their organizations and start the dialogue with the other 129 leaders. And you take a look at the Folk Alliance today, and it basically follows that same pattern, only it's obviously, 14 years removed, so it's grown incredibly. I mean, here we would have a few tables with people having their advertising literature, and today we have this 20,000 square foot, meeting hall for people to have their booths in. But it's the same basic ideas, and it was a great success. The weather was incredible. People enjoyed the place. We have photographs on our walls from those meetings. And most of the people who were there are still associated, and they're still active in various capacities. And we hammered out the beginnings of the basic mission and purpose for the Folk Alliance, what its focus would be. And we elected, while we were there, the 130 people elected 15 people for the formative committee. And then those 15 people met quarterly in Philadelphia to hammer out the basic bylaws.
And that group is, I've talked to every one of that group, and you and Elaine were the last, but I'm glad I got to you at Vancouver, I guess. Or was it Vancouver last time? I guess it was. Yeah, I don't remember anymore. Yeah, are you going to Jacksonville?
Huh?
Are you going to Jacksonville?
No, we're not going to go. In all the years, all the 14 years, the only time we missed Cleveland because Elaine had a stroke.
Oh, God.
And it was too early, and she had therapy and so forth. But we made it to
Vancouver.
Yeah. Now this one is in Jacksonville, and we're sending some other members of our staff. Elaine and I always go, but we're getting older and slowing down a little bit, and we have a lot of work to do this year. This is our 20th year of our festival.
I see.
So we have a lot of 20th anniversary stuff to do. So no, we won't be there this year.
Okay.
Are you going?
Yeah, I'm going to go, and I hope to follow up on some things, and I really want to complete this manuscript in 2002. My wife really wants me to complete this manuscript in 2002, so I want to go and tie up some loose ends with people in the Folk Alliance. I'm tying this into a discussion of Rounder Records, which started I'm deliberately concentrating on things that started after the Great Boom, and Rounders started in 1970 because my thesis is that the Great Boom didn't end anything. Things just went on with people who perhaps wanted to go on in a quieter way without all the hoopla that the 60s revival.
In a matter of fact, my opinion is that there was no boom. What there was a commercial success.
Right.
And a bunch of groups, made a lot of success in popularizing it to the mass audience. But the original folk audience, folk music by its nature is local.
Beautiful. Thank you.
And locality never changed, and it still goes on.
Thank you.
And organizations that we've had and so forth are just, absolute proof that it never went away, and it's still there. And many of the groups, that old folk singing group with areas in a dozen places around L.A., still continues, still gets new people on board constantly, and they never went away either. So as far as I know, the waning is in the popular culture and not in the actual folk culture.
Right. Let's see.
And you can prove this any day by looking at the number of small societies that there are all over the United States and Canada and Europe and the Folk Alliance now has grown to Australia and Austria and Sweden and so forth because the communities were always there, and they just now found I saw an experiment in physics and chemistry actually when I was in high school. The teacher dissolved a whole cup full of salt in a clear solution of water, and knowing how much could dissolve, she dropped in a couple of crystals of a pinch of salt, and suddenly it started snowing in the water. It became super saturated and it started crystallizing, and to an effect, that's what the Folk Alliance has done to a lot of these small groups. They become the kernel around which many of these groups can get organized, and their purpose is community. I'm getting sick and tired of watching TV. There's another award show every week,
yes.
and all, and for the same reason. Everybody has their particular vested interest, and they're trying to promote themselves.
Yeah, let me read you a few words here, because I want to. You've echoed what I thought was my thesis so beautifully. I love it because it supports. I need support. I can't make up a thesis. I have to get it from people like you. But I've already written. Let's see. I wrote. Turning to a section about the end of what I call the Great Boom, which you just. And I said, in general, the more localized the folk music scene, the more ties it has to ongoing community activism, and the less it tries to compete within the larger pop music arena, the more likely it is to thrive. And I was talking about the years post-1965, in the 70s. In other words, so localized scene ties to an ongoing work of a community, and the less it tries to bring in stars or what have you, then it can live, and it always lived. Mm-hmm. This is good.
And by the way, it from a national point of view, whatever that boom that that you're talking about was national because the Smothers Brothers and so forth would get national press on their shows. But in terms of boom and bust, in the folk community, it more or less is boom and bust based on the talents of the local artists.
Right.
When you get some superb fiddlers in a particular locale, itinerant musicians migrate to these people. They come because they want to learn and study.
Right.
And this was true in Ireland as well, with a lot of the Irish fiddlers. And so they will come to communities because there is some great musician there. and they'll kind of orbit around that musician. And if that musician gets up and leaves, quite often the community will follow that person. We have it, we have it in L.A., some incredible musicians that have great followings. And as I say, the boom, if you will, or bust, depends on whether there's any great musicians there.
Sure.
And Tom Salber is a great musician here in Los Angeles, and there's a great community around Tom. And he goes east every so often to make new recordings and what have you. But you get a musician like Tom who plays incredible fiddle, incredible banjo, incredible mandolin. That's what I find the boom and the bust.
Mm-hmm.
And L.A. right now is a boom town for traditional music. The contra dance scene is incredibly great, and they have all kinds of bands and great callers that have developed. And so, anyway, people now who come to the West Coast go to San Diego and wind up in Vancouver. the old house concert groups are still there, still doing their thing, and nobody really books them anymore. People now know them and they'll go there. But every so often a new folk musician will call Elaine and she'll freely give them the names and addresses of all the places. And now with the internet, these gig lists float around all over the place.
Are you a computer engineer or a computer? I know you work in computers and have for many, many years, and long before it was on everybody's desk. But what exactly is it that you do?
Well, I graduated from MIT in aeronautical engineering,
okay,
and practiced it for a few years, and got hooked by software, computing, and I've been in software R&D for 40 some odd years.
I see. Okay.
And I was chief technologist for Unisys for about 35 of those years.
Okay.
And I started my own business about 10 years ago when Unisys got into trouble and didn't think there was any intellect west of the Mississippi. And I ran my own business till about 2 years ago when an old friend of mine used to work for me called me up and said, you want to do some business here on the West Coast? And I said, great, I don't want to travel anymore. When you're a consultant, you wind up only getting paid when you're sitting in somebody else's office on the East Coast doing whatever the hell they want you to do. And I said, that's no way to run a business. I want to run a business out of my own office, not somewhere else. So he called me, and I went down, and we had a lot of chat, and then they made me a job offer. And I said, I don't want a job. I want a consulting contract. So we negotiated some more, and I decided, okay, I don't want to work so hard. So I work half-time for Northrop Grumman.
Okay.
And I'm building up a research group there.
Cool.
I have about 4 people working for me now.
Good.
I've been there a year and a half, and I've won 2 major contracts for them.
Good.
But
more satisfying than the full-time.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy the work. That's what the intellectual stimulation is great. The commute from the San Fernando Valley to the airport is killer.
Right.
And if I quit, it'll be because I don't want to spend 2.5 hours a day commuting on the freeways.
Right.
That's what comes with living in the best of all places.
Right. Let me leave you with a something to think about and to talk to Elaine about, if I could. I have talked to a great many people who were at Malibu, as I said, including the entire 15 people who served on the steering committee. That was done quite deliberately. I, of course, wanted to talk to those people, but I talked to a whole lot of other people who, in some cases, I did not even know they were one of the 130. I talked to them about their folk music activities or even their alliance activities, and then said, "Oh, did you know that I was I was at Malibu in '89, so I've talked to a lot of folks of that nature. You told me that you taped many or all of the sessions, and what I'm going to ask you to think about is to, at some point, I would love to get the flavor of what went on there, and I would love to listen to those tapes under whatever arrangement you would be comfortable with. So I know that's...
How many years ago was that, 14?
Yeah.
Well, the tapes have never been played in 14 years.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would love to hear them.
On one of my shelves somewhere.
Right. Well, I would love to sit, as I say, under whatever circumstances you and Elaine thought were appropriate. I would love at some point to hear them, discuss with you more, what I'm doing.
Questions that you might want to ask Elaine, because she just walked in?
God, I don't think I have any specific questions of her. You've gone through. I don't mean to give her short shrift either. I just want to, and my wife has poked her head in here, but I don't have anything specific. I could say hello to her, sure.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Elaine. This is Michael Scully. I spent just a wonderful
I know.
stretch with Clark in the last. It was very helpful.
All right. Well, I hope that helped you.
It did a great deal.
Okay. Well, have a happy New Year.
Thanks very much. Is Clark getting back on the phone, or is he?
It's up to you. I mean,
just give me him for a moment, if you could.
Hello?
Hi. I don't want to take any of her time, but I just want to, as I said, I just want to, I will, I don't know what your reaction to that is silently, if you'd like me to email with you to follow that up, but at some point I'd like you to, I'm going to ask you that.
Follow it up.
Okay.
I think I can find the tape somewhere. As I said, I don't know if they've ever been played in 14 years.
It's history. It is history, and I think it's important history. I mean, it's history of this ongoing thing that we call the Folk
Alliance.
Pardon me?
Elaine was wondering whether we ever gave the tapes to Folk Alliance.
Well, Phyllis would know that for sure. But in Vancouver, you said you believed you had them.
I think I still have them on one of the shelves.
I'll send you an email about it, and we can start a discussion of it. Thank you very much, Clark, and thank you for the last 90 minutes.
Yeah.
All right.